Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today is Freedom Friday. What does freedom mean to you? I hear people ask. And my answer is freedom is an objective concept. Well, liberty, even better. It has meaning. There is a way to have it, and it requires the objective delegation of the use of force for retaliatory purposes, which means we need government as a necessary good. Does that mean that what the government always does is good? No, it actually seems to point to oftentimes the opposite is the case. Over the last, I don't know, I'm not going to even say several years, many decades now, maybe since the 60s or so, there have been these reoccurring hostilities against the police, as the police are perceived as a gang, a rival gang. And I like to say it's not exactly entirely wrong to look at it that way when we know that the government comes to represent a type of gangster in chief when they become the head of a lobby system or the place of a lobby system where they have different constituent groups pressuring them for favors. And that is why what we need is capitalism, the objectivity of law, the rule of law, not of men. No man should ever be able to make arbitrary decisions when it comes to using force against somebody else. And when it comes to dealing with, violence between police and civilians, it's a very difficult thing to unpack. And I'm getting close to the end of this opening monologue here and about to bring on our co-host. But I want to say one thing. We're students of objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy, and something we see a lot, and maybe from personal experience or by viewing others, is that when oftentimes people discover Ayn Rand and objectivism, it's so exciting and like, whoa, finally some answers, finally there's clarity. And that's all great, but you have now reached level one. You've reached level one, level two is now you need to start looking back and kind of correcting many of the premises that you've been living with your whole life. We unfortunately need to integrate this rational philosophy as adults, as biological adults who have been living with faulty premises for a long time. So same with the societal issues. When we talk about government and citizens and this and that, we need to remind ourselves and each other that untangling this mess, it's not going to be simple, and we need to kind of check our premises every step of the way. If you're still here after that 45-minute opening monologue, you're in for a reward, because we are here with a guy who is normally behind the scenes, but he is kind of the puppeteer. This guy, he is everything that people accuse the government of being. He is actually the puppeteer of the Daily Objective, the man, the myth, Razi himself. How you doing?
Good. And first of all, before we get into the topic, I want to say that I know Nikos's fan club has grown massively because of this show. And this week, he's only been on twice. So my apologies, and we'll make it up to everybody next week. We might add another show and have him on 6 times. But yeah, today there was this issue in London where a police officer got shot to death. And actually, what I wanted to talk about was less the shooting, because it takes one person to shoot somebody. But when I saw this, I looked through the Blue Lives Matter trend on Twitter, and we always have to say when we talk about Twitter, the Twitter, if you want to see civilized discourse, you're not going to go there. Twitter is where calm people go to get angry. It's not a place where this is not the place where people like us are going to end up winning and influencing the culture. We might help move people in some direction, but then they'll have to probably click a link and see something more in depth. That being said, we're all human beings with free will. We choose what we spend our time on, how we react to different things, and some of the things in this hashtag are absolutely vile. And it's not like you have to scroll through for 10 minutes to find something like that. It's many, if not most, of the tweets are either celebrating this or, saying something like, "Oh, where are you people?" When somebody black gets shot, as if anybody who is bothered by the police officer getting shot is necessarily, on board with unjustified killing of black people. So it's either you're on the side of cop killing, or you're on the side of killing innocent black people, which of course is a false dichotomy. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I think I don't know if you've seen the hashtag, or if actually it would show up. It will give you the same results because you're in America. But
Well, it's like when people argue about the government, the lobby system. I basically liken everything to the lobby system. So, like anything from your own personal inner contradictions to, police versus, police unions, or police versus, this, that, or the other. Um, we have a government with an improper delegation. We're delegating the improper tasks to the government. Their job ought to be objective reality requires there to be a government that protects your rights and property, so protects your rights and arbitrates disputes. Their job should not be to clean up the community by, with preventive laws, with, like stop people from behaving in a way that could lead to criminal activity. No, catch criminals, investigate complaints, investigate crimes. And that needs to be that. And people need to know that. The citizens need to know what the police is there for, what they're interested in doing, what they're getting paid to do. And the people need to know that they themselves are paying the police for this. And that's that. And when we have a lobby system, when we have a government whose job is both to kind of protect people's rights, but also to engineer society in various ways, and to kind of incentivize some behaviors and to sort of disincentivize other behaviors, and to take from some, to take from the rich and give to the poor, or take from X and give to Y, we're going to end up with a no-sum game. We're going to end up with a society where people are at each other's throats and see each other as necessarily the enemy. And that's why I think when you say, "Oh no, this police officer was shot unjustly," someone says, "Oh, so you're for police going out and shooting unarmed citizens, or just going out and shooting citizens?" Of course, it becomes a lobby system of rhetoric. It's not only a lobby system of government in the literal sense, but we are now living with what I call a lobby system of the soul. And there's been a hashtag since the George Floyd killing that I've seen called ACAB, all cops are bastards. If that is true, if that is what you believe, then is it wrong to just kill cops at random? I mean, obviously, I don't think that all cops are bastards. I don't think all cops are anything. I believe in rule of law. I believe every police officer should be held to the same objective standard as the citizens. And how exactly to enforce that? I say we need to be careful, because we're not legal scholars, and we're not sociologists. Like, we're not experts on how exactly the checks and balances should be set up to maximize the ability to hold policemen accountable. But right now we're in a place where the purpose of the police is still kind of up in the air. Are they here to protect us? Are they here to engineer society? Is the government here to protect us? Are they here to engineer society? And it leads to a conflict. It leads to a zero-sum game. But remember, if this is what people believe, if they do believe that all cops are bastards or all cops are pigs, if they don't believe that, so and what they mean by that, I think this is I don't think anyone would say I'm straw manning. I think people who say ACAB, who say all cops are bastards, what they're saying is all police are participating in a system that oppresses people. I think that's a fair paraphrasing of that hashtag, of that sentiment. So if that is true, if all police are basically Nazis, if they're all basically, participating in this ongoing Holocaust against the citizens, then by that standard, you're going to see people act out in a way that's consistent with that. This is why ideas matter. It's not genetics. It's not, conditioning, quote unquote. I mean, it's those things in cahoots with the philosophy in the culture, and the philosophy that is claiming the moral high ground this year. And for a while, the philosophy claiming the moral high ground is the philosophy that says all police are participating in a system that oppresses individual citizens or communities of citizens.
Yeah, so I'm definitely with you on, government does many things that it shouldn't do, or pretends or attempts to do things, but I wouldn't let these people off the hook. Certainly anybody tweeting a cab, this is the one thing that I couldn't resist responding to on Twitter today was one of those um, tweets. And by the way, the person tweeting it, Zuby, who we've had on this show and who is a hardcore conservative who I disagree with on many things. One of the things he says is that if somebody has their pronouns in their bio, they're probably not good people. This is definitely true of this 20-year-old woman who tweeted that, who tweeted something about people who are sad about this are bootlickers, and her profile also actually has hashtag ACAB, hashtag Free Palestine, hashtag Black Lives Matter, and so she's consistent at least, and that's the thing. This whole movement, I mean, it came back to the forefront with the killing of George Floyd. Now, they use the word justice as supposedly something they want or are advocating. If they wanted justice, they're getting justice in the killing of George Floyd. That's a wrongful killing. The person, possibly a murderer, the cop who did that is in prison and is going to stay there for a very long time. They don't want justice. They want, by the way, to claim racism in every case where a black person is killed, including George Floyd, where I'm still waiting for the evidence of a racial motivation. It could be there, but I haven't seen it, and I don't think it's been made public. So yeah, I think these people, have a very bad agenda. Even if you're fighting against people who may be doing wrong things, you can do that. You can be worse than bad people. And I'm not calling cops bad people. I think it's mostly government. I think, there are still some good laws that need to be enforced. So I don't blame cops for every bad law that there is.
I mean, by the way, all cops could, not all, obviously we can't philosophically say all cops are anything because they have volition, but it could, let's say it turns out that 99% of police officers are just the worst elements of society. They took this job because it gives them a baton to go out and beat people, and that 99% of them, let's say, hypothetically, are bastards. What is the solution? Where do we want to, where are we and where do we want to go is the question. And the answer is we are in a lobby system where the law is treated like an emotional issue that people just sort of need to everyone gets their input, and then we'll sort of see where our collective unconscious takes us. But where we need to end up is objective rule of law, a government with a specific purpose. Imagine what it's like. I know. This is, okay, it's a big issue, but imagine the psychology of a police officer in a mixed economy. And yes, a lot of them, we want to hold them accountable. We also want to hold citizens accountable. Imagine what it does to the psychology of citizens and police officers alike when there's not a clear understanding of what is the law, what is the what are the rights of the individual, what is moral, is selfishness, is altruism right, what is reality. I mean, we live in a sort of post-philosophical culture where anyone who gets educated is basically taught, don't come to this school, don't come to this classroom to learn anything objectively true. But specifically the police officer, he took a job with the purpose of, that it, at least in theory, is supposed to be here to enforce the law, or in theory to serve and protect, as it says on their cars, right? But then he is told, okay, here's what we have a budget for. We need to go arrest these drug dealers, and that's about it. And then this right here, this is a serious Dear White People moment here. I'm going to quote The Wire, which I've been watching, but I think that show is realistic, where you see like the mayor needs to take money away from the police so that he can throw it at the public schools. And government should have nothing to do with schools. But when the government of a failing city is tasked with both funding a school as well as the police, you can see that the police are going to have most of their budget slashed, and then the budget they do have is going to be mostly allotted to looking good by arresting small-time drug dealers rather than murderers and burglars and rapists. So remember that everything has a consequence, that the philosophy we're living with both affects our psychology as well as the existential outcomes in politics. But no, I mean, we don't want to let people off the hook who are tweeting out things so ugly. I just try to avoid it because I know this is just a very ugly sentiment that people are expressing.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, you know, there are many cops in the world, and undoubtedly, some of them, even in relatively good countries, are bad. I mean, we know that because we saw them kneeling in Black Lives Matter protests. So some are clearly bad. But yeah, again, these people on Twitter choose what they put out there, choose what they put time and effort into, and they choose to put time and effort into making a point that killing cops is a good thing. And you know, and again, they're in any case where a black person is shot by police in America, they're going to protest. The context doesn't matter. I think Kenosha is a good example where you see somebody being arrested. So they have guns pointing at him. You know, if you're in a country where you know, getting arrested means getting sent to Siberia, nobody ever hears from you again, absolutely resist arrest. You're about to die. But when you're arrested in America, if cops are pointing a gun to you and not shooting, so they're probably not corrupt cops that are just there to kill you, you get arrested, and then you have a legal system that enables you to fight against it if it's a wrongful arrest. If you walk into your car when there are guns pointed at you and you reach for something, it would be wrong for the police officer to wait and see whether you're pulling out a gun or you know, a rose to hand him. So but they were protesting after, and they were protesting, you know, those were uh, I don't want to say protesting, they were rioting worse than they were rioting after George Floyd. So yeah, it's these people, the Black Lives Matter movement and other elements of the let's say violent left are um, the enemy, and they are being pushed forward. Their message is being pushed forward and endorsed by the culture at large. So the problem here is, you know, the tweets are just a symptom, but the disease is very, very serious, and we need to take it seriously because, yeah, celebrating a death just because all you know about the person being murdered is that they're a cop, that says something about the person and the atmosphere that is enabling them.
Yeah, I mean, look, people tweeting are usually the most radicals, and the person who went out and shot a police, he's a type of radical for sure. I mean, that's kind of who rises to the top on a social media where ideas are just expressed all day. But these radicals end up influencing people, obviously, and they have a moral high ground. That's why they're radical. They're consistent. They claim a moral high ground. That's why it's so important that we understand what is morality, what is a rational approach to morality. And of course, most people would just push aside that entire question and say, no, morality is whatever we say it is. It's society, or it's subjective. I think it's important we not like downplay the maybe severity of how bad some police are, or how badly the system is manifesting in the way that certain neighborhoods are being policed. I mean, we live in a very, very mixed economy, a very mixed society, and I think it might be a lot worse than maybe sometimes we see. And some people, they do see a lot more than I do, and they do report that it is pretty bad, that a lot of cops are basically acting like thugs. But the question still remains, where do we want to get? What is the end goal? If anyone is being violent, whether it's in a riot, a rebellion, or a going at a rogue shooting of a police officer, what is your end goal? If your end goal is to overthrow this government and replace it with one that protects individual rights, that's one thing. But if your goal is just, I'm angry at this and I'm lashing out and it's not my fault because of the way I was treated, how is this going to make things any better for anyone, including yourself? It's obviously not. So, you know, it's important we be prudent.
And this should be the end goal. It's people like this 20-year-old woman, you know, getting people like that to the point where they think actually about their own lives, like the people we saw when the riots were starting. You know, those guys who were shouting at protesters that they saw in the street, you know, we're on your side, and then they threw a brick or something and smashed the window, and then they're like, we're on your side, we're on your side, and then they get another brick. Or the woman who tweeted from her shop, you know, to support them, and then later tweeted from her shop, you know, I'm hiding because they broke into my shop. So we need to, you know, we need to connect abstractions to concretes, and we need to connect, you know, ideas to real life, and tell these people, yeah, you know, burning down stuff and killing people, that has an effect, and it's not limited to somebody else. And even if it is, that's a human life just like yours. You should you know, take that into consideration, and think, is this the kind of world that you want to live in and that will make your life better? Because this woman is not pushing for a world that would be better for her. She's pushing for a world that would be much
No.
worse for her.
Well, she's motivated by her philosophy, which is very mainstream in the world of academia. It's still, it's hard to say, to push on people out in everyday life, but in a university, it's not controversial to say that the USA is an occupied territory, that the Native Americans are currently being sort of, you know, that they were killed, and now that they're being basically held like this land is theirs and it's occupied. And then what do you, I mean, you want to argue with them about, you know, Palestine versus Israel and England and like the police in England and all that? It's like, there's just, it's impossible to argue about any of these things when people's view of the world is so Hegelian, when they see every collective as like a breathing entity and history as this deterministic force. It's ridiculous, but this is why ideas matter. And it's also important whenever this comes up to remind people that anarchists are not our friends. Anarchists, whether they're the violent types we see in the street or whether they're sort of civil libertarians who they see government as an evil in itself, ultimately they may seem like friends, but they're really not. Unfortunately, there is a strong anarchist premise throughout society that we sometimes don't even notice. But the way people view government as the enemy, I think, is the problem. People need to see government as a necessary entity, as a necessary requirement for living, but that its purpose needs to be properly identified and then make it so.
The people running it, I would say, in many cases, are the enemy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and yeah, the side of the supposedly better side is just as tribalistic. I mean, you and I both were born in a country that, you know, the justification for its existence by its advocates, or many of its advocates, as well, it was ours 2,000 years ago. Really? You know, I wasn't there 2,000 years ago, so.
And yeah, and are you living like the Jews 2,000 years ago? Are you fulfilling your end of the contract? Are you fulfilling your end of the contract? Now you got me started on a rant when we're out of time.
Some of them are, by the way, but I think they're the least, you know, Zionist.
Listen, you know, we live in a world full of people who say, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist. But, you know, and I understand it's often a facade when they say it. But for me, look, I love the Jewish people. Some of my favorite people are Jews. I have Israeli books here nearby. I love some aspects of Israeli culture. But we can do a full episode just bashing Israelis, some of the ones I've met, some of the ones I've known. I mean, it comes from a place of love. But sometimes tough love is needed to help a culture find a better way.
That actually sounds like a good episode. And can I encourage everybody to sign up to our YouTube channel to wait for that episode and some other great content that we're going to have, some brand new stuff starting next week. So.
And we'll be working with the BDS movement as well. That's a joke. Everyone, please relax. Okay, thank you for joining us, everybody. This has been a lot of fun. Always a treat to get Lord Emperor behind the scenes to come and appear on the show itself. Very busy man. We're humbled. Nikos, wherever you are, I hope your men's rights retreat is going well. And that is a joke. I don't actually know where he is. Until next time, everybody have a fantastic weekend. And remember, let's have some good premises out there.